We begin this episode seeing the Brackens in the Blackwoods arguing over territory and declaring their support for Team Green or Team Black. The discussion gets a little heated, and the next thing you know, we cut to a scene showcasing a sea of corpses on a battlefield. I believe the scene was meant to show viewers how quickly things can get out of hand, and because one party in a conflict is a little too unhinged. Next, we see Rhaenyra burying both Sir Auric and Sir Eric. Princess Rhaenys approaches her and begins to have a discussion with Rhaenyra about finding another way to prevent this war from happening. Rhaenyra claims she doesn't see a way out of this, and Rhaenys expresses there's no war so hateful to the gods as a war between kin, and no war so bloody as a war between dragons. We cut to the next scene and see that Sir Christian Cole arrives late to a small council meeting as his first day as the King's Hand. Aegon and the other members of the small council are discussing the aftermath of the battle between the Brackens and the Blackwoods. We learned that both sides lost many men and were looking for any reason to fight since they've been feuding for years. Aegon seems to be pleased that some portion of the realm is at war. Sir Criston explains his plans to take the Riverlands in Aegon's honor. Alicent disagrees with his approach, but Sir Criston insists that time is running out and he needs to do this quickly. Aegon agrees and tells Aemon to accompany Sir Criston with his dragon Vhagar. Sir Criston says there was no need and that he and his men would travel up to the Riverlands inconspicuously. Suddenly, we see Mysaria and Rhaenyra converse about the assassination attempt. Rhaenyra asks, does she expect to be rewarded? Mysaria tells Rhaenyra she already showed her enough grace by giving her back her freedom. However, she would like to enact revenge on the Hightowers, and that she would like a place on her council. Rhaenyra agrees to this. Mysaria notices sea smoke flying in the distant sky and asks what's wrong with him. Rhaenyra claims the dragons are restless because they can feel war coming. Mysaria responds, maybe he's lonely. Rhaenyra meets Rhaena and instructs her to go to Pentos. Rhaena clearly disagreed with this and asks Rhaenyra if she's sending her away because she doesn't have a dragon. Rhaenyra explains to her that this war may get very brutal and she wants to ensure some members of the house survive this war and that she would be doing a great service to her house. Rhaena gets up from her seat and bows in agreement with a look of disappointment on her face. Next, we see Daemon on Caraxes, arriving at Heron Hall during a rainstorm. We see soldiers on the ground running away from the dragon. We then see Daemon walking through the haunted halls of the cursed castle. He stumbles upon a guard guarding a door and wrestles him away from the door. He bursts into the now unguarded room and exclaims he's here to take Heron Hall to a group of men having their supper for that evening. Simon Strong gets on his knees and swears his loyalty to Daemon. He offers him dinner and they begin to discuss Daemon's plans. Daemon refuses to eat his supper because of the possibility of being poisoned. Simon ensures he has nothing to worry about. Sir Criston prepares to leave to secure loyalty in the Riverlands. Alicent introduces him to her brother Sir Gawain, who appears to be more knowing than Sir Criston. Sir Criston introduces himself, but already seems annoyed by Sir Gawain's presence. He asks Alicent for a keepsake for good luck. She hands him what appears to be a handkerchief from her bosom. He thanks her and begins to travel outside the gates of King's Landing with his soldiers. We cut to Rhaenyra conversing with her small council, and they appear to be ready for war and are expressing plans to secure their houses in preparation of Team Green possibly making their first move. Rhaenyra says she will consider their requests, but she still wants to see if this war can be prevented. Next, we see Corlys and Rhaenys at the docks discussing the future of House Velaryon. Rhaenys suggests he makes Rhaena his heir. He refuses by expressing the girl doesn't ride a dragon and knows nothing of the sea. He playfully suggests that they should get started on making more heirs. Rhaenys smiles and tells him we're on the verge of war, Corlys. Corlys says luckily he knows plenty about the sea and begins to leave. Now we see Rhaena leaving Dragonstone with Rhaenyra's youngest children. Rhaenyra informs her she's sending her away with 3 young dragons with 4 dragon eggs from Cyrex's clutch. I think I know where 3 of these eggs end up in the future. Baela tells her sister she's providing a great service by ensuring the survival of their house. The 2 sisters hug and Rhaena begins her journey to Pentos. Suddenly we see Helaena and Alicent discussing their grief. Helaena expresses she moved past Jaehaerys' death and that the small folk have plenty to grieve about, more than she does. Alicent tells her she has the right to grieve like everyone else. Helaena walks to her window, looks back at Alicent and tells her, I forgive you. Alicent, stunned by what Helaena just said, she just stares at her with tears forming in her eyes. Next we see Aegon getting ready for war and to meet Sir Criston in the Riverlands with the Conqueror's armor on. Sneaky Larys enters the room and convinces him to stay at the Red Keep and tells him rumors are swirling about him leaving his brother Aemon and Mother Alicent to rule during his absence. Larys clearly sees that Aegon is insecure about being king and may be worried about being usurped by his sibling. Before Larys leaves the room, Aegon makes him his master of whispers. Larys thanks him and leaves to do God knows what. We cut to a man entering a bar. He sits with a few associates, introduces himself, and reveals he's a dragon seed to the table of men. For those of you who haven't read the books, dragon seeds are basically illegitimate offspring of the Targaryen family. He claimed his grandsire was the late King Jaehaerys and that his father was Balon the Brave. I have a feeling he may play a significant role in future episodes. King Aegon enters the bar. Everyone bows to him, and he buys drinks for everyone in attendance. Afterwards, a drunk Aegon and his friends enter a brothel and interrupt the erotic time of several patrons and sex workers. He pulls back another curtain and stumbles upon Aemon cuddling with his consistent lady of the night. He begins to bully Aemon by telling his friends his brother is still sleeping with his first prostitute, and even though she's grown old, he refuses to sample another, while laughing profusely. Aemon gives us a full frontal nude shot and walks away, bottling up his anger at the humiliation he just experienced. I have a feeling Aegon is going to pay for this in the future. Now we see Rhaenyra sitting on the floor in a room with one of her toddler's toys in her hand. She gazes at it with tears in her eyes. She's clearly missing her small children at this moment. She gets up to place the toy inside of a box and stumbles across Alicent's letter she sent her 2 episodes ago. She begins reading the letter. Next we see Sir Criston and Sir Gawain in the middle of their journey to the Riverlands. Sir Gawain wants to stop at a brothel instead of camping out in the woods. Sir Criston disagrees with this suggestion and notices a slight change in the sunlight. He looks up and says we're exposed. The other men look up, notice Baela on her dragon, and begin to run towards the woods. We cut to Baela's perspective and we see her quickly direct her dragon, Moon Dancer, to fly towards Sir Criston and his fellow knights at an accelerated speed. I love this scene because it shows that Baela is, in fact, Daemon's daughter, and is ready to jump into action at the drop of a dime. Sir Criston and his men make it into the woods. Baela hovers above them, circling the area, and commands Moon Dancer to fly away in High Valyrian. Realizing they're now safe, Sir Criston looks at Sir Gawain and angrily says, "No fucking ends." Baela reports back to Rhaenyra and the small council that Sir Criston and his men were on their way to secure the Riverlands. Rhaenyra's small council, full of men, urges her to prepare for war and that it's time to act now. We cut to Daemon trying to get cozy in his living quarters with a leaky ceiling in this damn haunted castle. We see that he secured the door with his sword and someone begins violently trying to enter the room. He hears a woman humming a song in High Valyrian. He leaves his room and follows the sound of her voice. Daemon is clearly having a supernatural experience. He locates the woman singing and realizes it's a teenage version of Rhaenyra sewing the head of Prince Jaehaerys back on his body. She turns around and tells Daemon she always has to clean up after his messes. He realizes that he's dreaming, wakes up standing in front of a weirwood tree, which is known to be connected to the magical world in the story. He turns around and notices Alice Rivers staring at him. She looks at him and says, "You will die in this place." Next, we see Rhaenyra ask Mysaria what she knows about Alicent's whereabouts. Mysaria thinks of one place where Alicent may be alone and suggests Rhaenyra wears a disguise to enter King's Landing. Suddenly we see Rhaenyra entering King's Landing in her disguise and she's giving us none of the seven realness. She spots Alicent and starts walking towards her with her personal guard, who's also cosplaying as someone of the faith. We see Alicent light a candle and begin to pray. Suddenly, we see a hand to the right side of Alicent light a candle, and the mysterious figure falls to her knees, revealing that Rhaenyra succeeded in getting close to Alicent. Finally, we see these two together again. Rhaenyra informs Alicent she did not order for the assassination on her grandson and that she doesn't understand why Alicent would usurp her inheritance. Alicent expresses Viserys changed his mind while he was on his deathbed and said Aegon's name. A tear falls from Rhaenyra's eye, and she asks Alicent what his exact words were. Alicent explains that he was weary and mentions Aegon, the prince who was promised. Rhaenyra interrupts Alicent and asks, "He talked to you about a song of ice and fire?" Alicent stared at Rhaenyra with a look of confusion on her face. Rhaenyra reiterates by saying the conqueror's dream. Alicent realizing that she possibly misunderstood Viserys, and Rhaenyra realizing her father kept his word. The two women look at each other. Rhaenyra pleads with Alicent to try and stop this war. Alicent refuses and tells Rhaenyra that it's too late to turn back now. Alicent leaves and we see Rhaenyra slightly break the fourth wall with a look of determination on her face. I think it's clear that she must act now and fight for what's rightfully hers. This was another solid episode. Although we're all ready to see some action, I feel this episode moves so much of the story forward. We witnessed Rhaenyra put herself in danger and make one last attempt to prevent this war. We got to experience Daemon roam through the haunted halls of Harrenhal and got a small taste of Baela's capabilities in the skies. We also got a chance to meet some interesting new characters that may play an important role in this war later this season. Overall, I'm going to rate this episode a solid B. If you enjoyed this review, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you for the next episode.